Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech and iOS 18.5 released to the public a couple weeks ago, but there's even more to talk about since the iOS 18.5 is out. What's new video. We'll talk about some Apple news, we'll also talk about some features and changes, and we'll talk about the overall experience. Not just my experience on the iPhone 16 Pro Max and iPad Pro M4, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll, where at the time of this video there's over 16,000 votes and 288 comments. I've gone through all the comments to determine what everything is like, from battery life, stability, bugs, and more. And be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. Now, Jony Ive, who designed much of the things we use today, recently sold his company to OpenAI. This is to build an AI device some describe as an iPod shuffle for your neck, but Ming-Chi Kuo has actually said that the device will be slightly larger than the Humane pin. So this could be an AI sort of necklace or pin, and I'm not sure a whole lot of people will want to use that. However, Jony Ive has used it, of course, along with OpenAI's CEO, and they believe it to be a core device for daily life, such as the iPhone, moving forward. So we'll have to wait and see what that actually entails, if it's worth using, but I'm definitely curious to see what that is. Now, Fortnite, of course, was added back to the App Store this past week, and it's a huge success already. It's the #1 app in the App Store for games, and you'll see here, if we go into Fortnite, it's available now, at least in the United States, maybe around the world very soon, but either way, it's no longer banned and is available if you want to try it out. So it works on iOS and iPadOS. Now, it's crazy how time flies, but iPhone 7 Plus and iPhone 8 are now considered vintage and no longer supported or are obsolete. On Apple's obtaining service for your Apple product after an expired warranty page, if you scroll down, you can see all of the different vintage products from iPhone to iPod to Mac and more. And you'll see here as we scroll down that 8 Plus, 8, iPhone 7 Plus, they're all obsolete at this point. So they're no longer supported, and you can get additional support maybe or a little bit of help if you need it from Apple, but they're no longer considered products that are sold or recent at this time. Now, Google this week had their Google I/O Developer Conference and showed some very impressive upgrades for their AI assistant Gemini. I've used it for some time on the Android side, and it should be added as an option other than ChatGPT in future iOS versions, but now we have Gemini Live in the United States in the app. Now, many of you asked in my video about the latest app updates why you didn't have the option for Live, and it seems like it's limited to the United States, at least for now. But you can go into it and then ask questions using the camera and more. So let's try this out. Which iPhone is this?
That looks like an iPhone 13 Pro Max. Are you looking for some info on it?
This is actually an iPhone 16 Pro Max, as you can see from the camera control here on the side.
Ah, you're right. It is an iPhone 16 Pro Max. What would you like to know about it?
So Gemini is an assistant you can go back and forth on, get more information from, and just sort of work with overall to see what's going on in your environment. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not, but overall it's great at analyzing data and recognizing things, and you can actually teach it and it will learn over time. So that's something I thought was sort of an odd experiment. It really thinks it's a 13 Pro Max in gold instead of desert titanium with the 16 Pro Max. But either way, the assistants keep getting better, and Apple's really falling behind here, but hopefully it will get better with iOS 19. Now, there was a new feature update thanks to an app update from Google with Google Translate. If we go into settings, go down to our apps, under apps, go to default apps, and then go down to translation. If you have the latest version of Google Translate, you can now select it as the default translation app. So we have Translate from Apple or Google Translate. So whatever one works for you, you can just select it there. Now, I recently made a video going over the Apple ecosystem and how I use it, and it works really well for me, but it seems to be helping a lot of people in patient care at Emory Healthcare. Apple actually made an announcement this week on their website, and you can see that here on Apple Newsroom, where Apple products transform care at Emory Healthcare. So they're powered by the suite of Epic healthcare apps. It's elevating care delivery and the patient experience. I'll link this in the description below, but this goes over sort of the overall ecosystem, how it can help those with different people in need, and help at places such as hospitals or healthcare in general. Now, as far as releases this week, there's a few things to go over as Apple released new updates for the AirPods Max USB-C. There was new firmware, bringing it to version 7E108. However, it's not for the Lightning version, only USB-C, which is a bit disappointing as many people seem to be having some issues with Bluetooth. We'll talk more about that in a moment, though. Now, if we go to the AirPods update website, you can see the latest versions here. And if we scroll down, you can see what versions have been updated and what's in it. And it just basically has bug fixes and other improvements. So very vague notes again. Hopefully they'll update this in the future with more notes like they did with 7E101. Now, this week, we also had an update with iPad. On older iPads that released alongside iOS 18.5, we gained iPadOS 17.7.7. However, it was causing all sorts of issues for those that installed it. Reboots, apps crashing, things like that I heard from many of you, and Apple stopped signing it and sort of pulled the update until they fixed the overall issue. This week, they fixed it with iPadOS 17.7.8. Why they don't release the iOS version of that, I'm not sure. Maybe because iOS 18 is available, but either way, it's available for iPad, and you can download that now if you were having issues with it. Also, Apple stopped signing iOS 18.4.1. This typically happens after a new release comes out. However, we don't have a version to downgrade to, so this makes me think we could see an iOS 18.5.1 just like last year with 17.5.1. What the overall release date is, we don't really know, but it could be as soon as this coming Monday if there's additional issues they need to fix, and there are some issues we'll talk about in a moment, and hopefully they'll release that to resolve those until the next version comes out. Of course, many of you have been asking me, where is iOS 18.6 Beta 1? And again, we could see that this week. However, last year we didn't see iOS 17.6 Beta 1 until after iOS 18 was revealed. So this year we could see iOS 19 on June 9th, like we normally do. So iOS 19 Beta 1 would release. Maybe after that, a few days later, we could get iOS 18.6 Beta 1. We could get it before or after. Apple has changed this up from year to year, where the previous year we actually had it released with iOS 16. So we'll have to wait and see what they do this week, as they haven't really given us any clues as to what they're going to do. However, with iOS 19, we'll have betas throughout the summer, with a public release typically in the 3rd or 4th week of September. So that's usually what we see right along the launch of iPhone 17. Now, of course, WWDC 2025 is coming up on June 9th, like I just mentioned, where we'll see iOS 19, iPadOS 19, and all the others, with watchOS 12, macOS 16, tvOS and HomePodOS 19, and maybe a few surprises as well. Apple updated their webpage this week on apple.com, so if we go to Apple's website here, you'll see if we go to the main website and scroll down, we have WWDC 25. You can now watch it on YouTube or on Apple's website is what it tells you as far as the keynote on June 9th at 10 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. Eastern. That's pretty typical of the overall time. You'll be able to stream it here, stream it on YouTube, maybe some other places as well. So you'll be able to see that. And then Apple did send out invites to media. If we go to X, and on X, you can see people were officially invited, whether that was to attend in person or watch online. But either way, the media was invited finally, and we're getting very close to WWDC. Apple also updated their developer app with all of the same sort of details on the different sessions, group labs, and more. Now, as far as iOS 19, there's a couple things to talk about this week, as Apple Intelligence, whether that's Siri or something new, is believed now to be on par with ChatGPT, according to Apple executives. They're working hard internally on this, and we could see a big update this year where it actually is on par with ChatGPT or Gemini. Hopefully it gets sort of around that level. Either way, I think they have a lot of work to do. It also appears that the Calendar app this year could get an update. So the Calendar app, I talked about before how there was a company that Apple purchased that works on AI with calendars and things such as reminders, and now they've posted a job listing for something similar. If we go to the website here, you can see Senior Software Engineer Calendar Experience. So they're hiring for that now, so that seems a little late, but maybe it would be ready by the time September rolls around and iOS 19 launches to the public. But supposedly this year, Apple's going to dial it back as far as the overall experience and release less features up front until they're ready. So instead of telling us there's going to be 300 or 400 changes, they might have 10 big ones. We'll see those, maybe some other changes with accessibility, and then have them roll out with the initial launch. Then they'll move on and tell us about the next features. Now, when it comes to the iOS 18.5 experience after a couple weeks, this is a bit disappointing, and Apple needs to do better at this point. Initially, it seemed to fix a lot of issues. It seemed to be much better with battery life, but now it's starting to slip a little bit. So as far as bug fixes, it did seem to fix quite a few issues as well, such as overheating was fixed for many people, especially in comments over the past couple days with all of the ones I showed you in the YouTube community poll. Rebooting seemed to fix many of the issues if you're having them now. CarPlay is working properly now, except for a few people having random disconnects. And for me, the wallpaper bug seems to be mostly resolved, but sometimes it will dim, just like there. Sometimes it does that. I go back in, maybe customize something. You'll see some people have suggested if I go into customize, I have the dark version on, but I don't. I have the lighter version of the wallpaper here, and it doesn't seem to fix it 100%. Sometimes it desaturates, sometimes it doesn't. So it's still hit or miss. It's sort of fixed depending on which wallpaper you set. As far as bugs, though, there's a major one this week with charging, specifically with MagSafe on iPhone 16 models. So if I bring in the MagSafe charger, I experienced this myself. So you'll see it's now charging for me, no problem here. However, I put it on my nightstand where I normally charge, and I went over that in an accessory video of the ones I use, and it did nothing. I woke up and I had very low battery. I just expected it to charge and I didn't look. I rebooted the phone and it would then charge again. However, it did charge through the plug. It wouldn't charge through the MagSafe adapter. However, I've heard from some of you that it won't even sort of charge through MagSafe even after a reboot. And Apple seems to be aware of this. According to people I've talked to online, they've reached out to Apple and Apple told them this is a known issue. So again, that leads me to believe we might have an iOS 18.5.1 soon. Micro stutters have returned for some, so whether that's on an iPhone 11 that's running a little bit older version, some people are seeing micro stutters, whether that's just scrolling, swiping home, things stutter from time to time, and I have seen that on my 16 Pro Max as well. Touch responsiveness seems to have gotten worse. That's definitely true for me, and I'm not using a screen protector on this phone. And sometimes I'll press on something and it just doesn't do anything. I'll have to keep tapping and then hope it works. So if we go into library, you'll see things are working and responsive right now, but sometimes from time to time, it's just really slow for whatever reason. So I'm not sure why that is. Also, people have complained of similar issues when trying to answer the phone. It won't respond to touch, and then they might miss it and have to call the person back. Also, many people are saying they're having call drops now. More CarPlay issues, it seems, are sort of creeping up with disconnects. And then people are seeing slowdowns. So going into apps, sometimes it just randomly slowing down, and that's even on newer phones as well. There's an odd orientation bug sometimes where it doesn't right itself right away, and then it will once you move it again. And then there's Bluetooth issues. I've seen this crop up in macOS as well, where I'm using these when I'm editing a video, and then all of a sudden the overall quality degrades, it starts to stutter, disconnect, and I've seen disconnects as well on my iPhone. I'll use AirPods Pro 2 instead, but I'll have them in my ear, they'll disconnect, not work right. There's just some odd issues here that sort of crept back after using it for a couple weeks. So initially I really recommended the update as it seemed to have fixed a lot of issues, but even last week the number one issue was network connectivity, so I noticed that as well. Again, the second most used issues were touch issues, apps freezing, icons and folders sort of not working properly once you use the tint feature, and haptic feedback even missing for one commenter. So as far as all of this goes, this is definitely not as good as I had hoped, and Apple really needs to do better this time around. It's gotten worse over time, and maybe they just can't at this point, and iOS 19 is the fix for that. I'm really hoping that's true, as they're said to be focusing on stability. When it comes to performance, well, once you reboot it and use it for a few days, it's fine for performance. Whether that's ProMotion, people have said that 120 hertz seems to be right this time around. It seems to be faster and smoother and working fine on those 60 hertz displays as well. However, they will slow down over time, it seems, and this used to be an issue that was non-existent for Apple. Now it seems to be very slow, but if we go into the camera, you'll see it opens quickly on both devices. Going into apps such as weather is nice and fast, as long as it has to load over Wi-Fi. But in general, it's fine, then it slows down, and I've had to hard reboot this a couple times this week to resolve issues. Initially, a huge amount of people saw improvements in smoothness and speed, and there's still people that haven't had issues. As far as overall heat, well, like I mentioned, it seems to be pretty good overall, but let's take a look at the thermal camera. It does feel slightly warm to the touch right now, but nothing to be concerned about, so let's take a look. Now, I have two iPhone 16 Pro Maxes, both running iOS 18.5. The one I was using here is running at about, well, we'll let it recalibrate, is running at about 91 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll put Celsius in the upper right. And the other one that's at idle is around 10 degrees cooler almost, at around 92.5 Fahrenheit. So much cooler overall. Of course, just sitting idle. I have this one in my hand. It's going to heat up a bit just from that. But well within what you would expect. It's not too warm, and it seems to stay nice and cool for most of the time. Now, over the past 2 weeks, it definitely seems like battery life has gotten worse, but let's take a look at your experience first. Thanks to Abhishek for sending this in. This is on an iPhone 11 Pro Max with 76% battery health, and it needs a battery replacement. However, he managed to get 3 hours and 48 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 35 minutes of screen off time, and used about 77% battery life. The day before, even better, 4 hours and 49 minutes, using about the same amount of battery, 75 to 76%. So based off of that, that's actually pretty good. But for me, it seems to have been a little bit worse this time around. If we go to battery health, I'm at 100% with 206 cycles. You can see more details here with coconut battery. And if we take a look at my overall battery life, yesterday, I had 3 hours and 49 minutes of screen active time, 3 hours and 24 minutes of screen idle time, and used over 75% of the battery. So you'll see I'm currently at 32%. If we go the day before, 3 hours and 6 minutes, and again, about 76% of my battery or so. So not really great battery life. If we go back a few more days, it was at 4 hours one day, around the same amount of usage. So I'm getting less and less usage here. I'm not really doing anything different. Overall, it's just not been that great for me. However, I did want to mention as well, based on all of the comments I went through, only 45% of commenters this week said battery was good or better than before on iOS 18.5 after 2 weeks. 55% said it was worse. Last week, it was much better. Almost 70% of users said it was better than 18.4.1. So at this point, it looks like it's sort of degrading. Maybe that's due to app updates, maybe something intensive going on, but either way, definitely not as good for me anyway as it was a week ago. Now let's go ahead and take a look at benchmarks. I actually ran it 3 times on this device, so if we go to the history, you'll see the last time I ran it was 3,529 for single core, 8,635 for multi-core. It's a pretty good score overall, not the very best I've had, but well within the margin of error, and definitely performing right where you would want the 16 Pro Max. So no real issues here, but definitely a little odd sometimes as it starts to slow down. Now, as far as the experience you're having, let's go ahead and take a look at your comments. Ahmed Zomar said, I don't know if I'm the only one, but iOS 18.5 is one of the worst and rare updates that I actually have trouble using it. Battery is much worse than 18.4.1 and buggy swiping from the bottom to view the recently used apps, etc. The last update was way better. Hope Apple fixes this soon. Prince Clayton 105 said, the battery performance of my iPhone 13 has been extremely good. Wish Hulk said, I'm on iOS 18.5 on my iPhone 13. Have seen a tremendous increase in the battery performance since iOS 18.4.1. The performance is better in iOS 18.5, no bugs, no app crashes or performance issues. Battery life is at 81%. Still getting 1 full day of backup on normal use. The Revenant T765 said, iPhone 16 battery is great, but performance is not great. Opening apps is slow and buggy. Shortcuts app automation not working properly. I have to delete and again create an automation for a task. Hopefully the next update brings better optimization and is less buggy. Rios Jonathan said, finally much better on 15 Pro Max, Watch 10, and my M4 iPad Pro. iPad does seem to take a long time to cache shaders in games though, and stutters still. Hoyoverse games, Withering Waves, Fortnite. Battery goes for 2 days on all 3 devices, but I did disable Apple Intelligence to get that. So it looks like iOS 18.5 isn't the fix for everything we had hoped initially. Some people are having great experiences, but it seems like anyone that has good battery life has issues elsewhere. Most people are experiencing some sort of odd bug, but of course not everyone has these issues, but some people have worse issues than others. A reboot seems to fix these, but again, this is a bit disappointing seeing how we're so late in the year at this point. So hopefully Apple fixes it with iOS 18.6 and of course iOS 19. And so that's everything with iOS 18.5. Hopefully it'll get a little bit better. Hopefully we get iOS 18.5.1 to resolve a lot of those issues. And it seems like Apple is going to take this seriously at this point, but we'll have to wait and see what they actually do. Let me know your experience in the comments below, and if there's anything different you noticed about iOS 18.5 after a couple of weeks. And of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.